Today on Locked On Predators, what do the Preds need to do over the last week of the regular season to get into the postseason and lock up a playoff berth? Run down those questions in just a little bit. Plus, physicality has been the name of the game for the Predators this season. Even though they're not dropping the gloves as much as they were, it's still living on in every game they play. Plus, a couple of the newer guys on the team. Who would you like to see them model their game after? Topics we're going to dive into today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer and editor at OnTheForecheck.com. Normally, I have a partner in crime, but Ann Kimmel has the day off. So instead, I am bringing in the Oates to my Hall, the big boy to my Andre 3000. I can't think of any more. The Machine Gun Kelly to my Megan Fox, I guess. I don't know. Here's Shaun Smith from On the Forecheck.
I'll take that. That's fine. You can just call me by my name.
Yeah.
I don't mind being Oates, though. Dude's pretty legit, so
Yeah.
I'll take it.
The mustache game, I think, is what really makes Oates.
So strong. So strong. Just luscious and thick. It's really good.
Yeah. There's no better way to start a podcast than a luscious and thick reference. Yeah, it's all downhill from here, folks.
It's all oh boy.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, me and Shaun we're longtime hosts of the On the Forecheck podcast. He now does On the Predators with Alex Daughtry every week. I do, of course, Locked On Predators here. So this is a bit of a reunion, buddy. Good to see you again.
I'm really excited. When I got the call, I was like, surely not. We're not getting the band back together. But Next thing you know, I'm tuning up my bass, and here I am, ready to rock.
Oh, the band is back together, and a perfect time because we, my friend, are in the stretch run of Predators hockey. Of course, they have a couple of days off before a back-to-back this weekend. They're at Tampa Bay, then at home against Minnesota. They got one more game against Calgary, kind of run it back from 2 nights ago, and then ending this season with a back-to-back at Colorado and at Arizona. Yeah, Shaun, I mean, this is, me and Ann have talked about it a lot. This is just kind of the Devil's Canyon for the Predators this last month or so.
It's funny because the team seemed like they surged for so long this season, and it was like, I believe, Alex always talks to me about the regression monster, which terrifies me and frightens me because I don't feel safe in my own house when I hear about monsters. But he assures me that it's not a physical monster, but something that actually happens to a hockey team when they exceed at a high level, and then they kind of go back to the norm. And we haven't really seen the Predators do that until this last stretch here. And it's like, is this really the time you want that to happen? And the answer is probably no. But it seems like they're working their way through it. Things are getting closer and closer to a clinching scenario, right?
I would assume so. Yeah, I'm not good at math. Our buddy Brian Bassinen on the Forecheck has been really good at putting out kind of the magic number math.
Yeah.
On his page that kind of details exactly what the scenario is. 5 games right now is indicated by the hand being held up.
I think the magic number's 5, but I think there's also teams playing as we record that could shift that number. So
I think Vegas right now is losing to Washington. But of course, we're recording this the night before. If Vegas loses, that's, we're not going to say clinch, but that's certainly going to be a very uphill battle for anybody to unseat the Preds. You kind of mentioned it earlier that Calgary win a couple of nights ago. Not only did they get the win, but they looked really, really good while doing it. And I think that was key because you go back to the past couple of weeks, and even some of the Predators wins that they had, they didn't necessarily look, super clean. It's not like, the Preds hockey we saw from like November, December, and January, where they were just on their P's and Q's and just kind of finding ways to control the game. The Calgary game a couple nights ago seemed to go back to that formula, Shaun, where it was just it felt like a statement win almost.
I think it's interesting to say the least that it was a statement win, because when you go back, if you rewatch the first, even the second period, things didn't really start getting spicy at all until the end of the second. It was what a lot of people call low event hockey, but the fact of the matter is that low event hockey can win games. You don't have to have a score of something crazy like, say, 8-3 to win 2 points. You just need to win by 1.
Compared to some of the games the Predators have played over the past couple of weeks, low event is actually an upgrade.
I'll take the low event, and I used 8-3 for a reason, but
we remember.
We remember. We have a long memory. We are not a goldfish. But here's the thing for me. The Predators they made a statement with that game, and it was interesting after the game. I think it was while we were talking to I think it was Matt Duchene after the game. He made the comment that the teams played each other with a lot of respect. And I think it was an interesting statement, because you never really hear anybody on the Predators say things like, there's a lot of bad blood, we got to take care of business. That's not part of their vocabulary. And even if they're thinking that, they're certainly not going to say it out in the open. But they said the teams played each other with a lot of respect. And I almost feel like both teams have to be aware that, number one, they're playing each other again a week after the game they just played. But even then, they may end up playing each other in the first round of the playoffs. And you don't want to start anything in these last 2 games of the regular season that's going to start the playoff series off on a really negative note. So I think you didn't see as much of, say, the aggressive physicality that maybe you got used to, which might kind of make the statement win or the identity win thing, come to mind. But I think they definitely played an identity game, even if there weren't punches thrown.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the physicality aspect of the Preds in just a little bit, because there's a lot more that goes into physicality that makes the Preds a physical team, besides, throwing big hits or dropping the gloves or whatever. But to me, it was kind of a throwback to what the Preds did earlier this year, which is just really good defense in front of Saros. We talked about it. The Flames are one of the best offensive teams in the NHL. Which it's kind of still weird to think about, just thinking about the Calgary Flames being sort of a defensive specialist team for, years and years and years now. And then, Nashville shut them down for the most part. They really limited their chances. And then the shots that did go through to UC Saros, he stepped up and made a couple of really good saves down the stretch. And it's key that we bring that up, because it seems the Predators have gotten away. I don't know. And I'll ask you, Shaun, it's maybe their identity a little bit, or maybe their execution.
Are you saying that you think maybe they've gotten away from their physical identity, or that they're just not executing that identity very well? Is that the question?
I think it's more towards the execution of the identity.
Okay.
Like if you go back to like the last couple of months, when they start to go into, as you call it, the regression monster. Yeah, he's around here somewhere.
I'm checking the corners.
Yeah.
Look, here's the thing. If you look back over the past, I'd say even just month, you're got to see a side of John Hynes post game, especially after losses and even after some wins that weren't necessarily pretty wins, that he seemed a little bit upset. And you can tell John Hynes isn't happy, not because his blood pressure rises, his face doesn't get red, he doesn't change the expression on his face, but he doesn't talk much when he's not very happy. And that's, I think for all the people who want to think like, oh, well, if the Predators have a bad period, the coach is going to go in the locker room and lose his mind. I mean, that doesn't even happen in the first place with John Hynes. But even beyond that, after the game, he's not going to come and scream and rant and rave to the media. He's very educationally minded, which, I myself am a teacher, so like I get that. He doesn't look at the game that just happened and get angry. He says, okay, how do we fix it? And he kind of approaches it from that direction. He can be frustrated after games when things don't go well. But for the first time this season, over this past month or so, that was the first time we really saw angry John Hines after games. And so I think, the question of execution is definitely, they weren't executing at the level they needed to in order to play the type of game they needed to play to put themselves in the best chance to win the game. It's still the game plan, it's still the identity, but they're not executing it. And I think the game against the Flames, since we were just talking about it, was really a big step back toward executing their identity style of play at a very high level.
Yeah. I mean, we used the term statement win earlier. To me, it was more of a statement in the Preds locker room. It's like, look, this is kind of who we've been all season. Just because some of the losses and wins haven't gone our way lately, this is still the team that we've been all season. We still have it in us. And, this Calgary Flames team, they're tough, but they're a team we may play in the postseason. And I've said this to Ann a couple times, Shaun, and I want to get your take on it.
Okay.
My take is that when the Preds are on, when they're really on, there's not a team in the Western Conference that scares me when they match up. I'm not going to go ahead and guarantee a win over anybody, but I don't look at any team in the West and say, yeah, the Preds are going to be outmatched greatly in that one. Just because I think when they're on, they have all the key components to winning, getting far in the postseason.
I can get behind that statement, Nick. What has Ann said? Has she agreed with you?
She agrees. Yeah.
She agrees?
Me and Ann are on the same page about most thing other than Alex Ovechkin's goal chase.
Oh, okay. Well, here's what I'll say, and to what you brought up. When the Predators are on their game, when they're making statements, when they're playing to their identity, what you have to remember about some of these very high octane offensively minded teams, like say, for example, the Colorado Avalanche. Let's just throw that name out there.
Yeah.
A lot of what they do, they're able to do because they are able to take advantage of the other teams. They're able to kind of make a statement early that, hey, we're going to skate down the ice. We're going to get through the neutral zone quickly, and you're going to let us into your zone, or you're going to pay the price. And I think I'm not saying that teams just step aside and go, here you go. But I definitely think there's an element of that in the way the other teams respond to them. The Predators' whole mindset from puck drop is that we're not going to let you do that. You may be better. You may be a more skilled team. You may have better shooters. You may have whatever. But you're going to have to come through us in order to do it. And when they're on it and when they're playing that way, you're exactly right. That really messes up a lot of those teams' game plans to be able to go in and just kind of have their way in the offensive zone.
And that leads us to an interesting point that I want to get to in a second, because we hear a lot about the Preds' physicality, but there's a lot more that goes into that other than just fighting and throwing big hits. And I want to break it down with you in just a second. First, I want to mention today's show brought to you by our friends at Shady Rays. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that gives you the features of $200 sunglasses for just the fraction of the price. That means polarized lenses, well-constructed durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. Also, something you won't find anywhere else is Shady Rays' Insane Protection Program. That's right, Shady Rays includes lost and broken protection on every pair they sell. They will send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what happened. Even if it's your fault, even if you left them on a plane or stepped on them while you're cleaning up your nonsense, they will replace them for you. So give them a try, and if you don't love them, you'll pay absolutely nothing. It's as simple as that. Plus, 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. Exclusively for our listeners, head to shadyrays.com and use code LOCKEDON to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's code LOCKEDON for their best deal of the season. 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses, backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. Well, there's nothing shady, Shaun, about the way the Preds play. We talk about it. You and I have talked about it several times about the identity and the physicality of which the Preds play. But there's so much more that goes on into the Preds being a physical team, other than fights, which they're leading the NHL in, and throwing the big body around. We know they levy a lot of hits. We know they get in a lot of fights, but there is so much more beauty and so much more intricacy into what goes into the Preds being a physical team.
Yeah, I'm going to make a comparison here, and I just bear with me. Bear with me,
I'm
okay?
bearing. I have no choice.
You're right.
Yeah,
So if you think back, did you see the movie Catch Me If You Can, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks?
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, really enjoyable movie, great movie. In the movie, I believe Frank Abagnale's father has a statement where he says something about why nobody can beat the Yankees. Do you remember what the reason is?
Because they can't stop looking at their pinstripes.
Can't stop looking at their pinstripes. If you look at the fact that the Predators are leading the NHL in fighting majors with, and it's not just, well, they've got a slight lead over another team. They've got almost double what the next team has. And it's it's really lopsided. And I think that's a lot like those pinstripes on the Yankees uniforms. People are so busy looking at those fights that they're really missing out on what physicality means for the Predators and their identity. Yeah, they're fighting, but fighting, I believe, is a natural kind of reaction to the way they play the game. People don't like it. And
Yeah.
if I go all the way back to when the team first hired Dan Hinote as an assistant coach, he said this before he had ever sat down with anybody on the team, had ever even been, as far as I know, in the locker room. But he said it was all about doing all of the little things along the way that wear a team down. And what he meant by that is forcing the other team to try to win puck battles, going into the corners, doing the dirty work, digging the pucks out, finishing all your checks, doing all of these things, and making the other team fight for every inch of ice they get. When you do that through the whole game, and I'm going somewhere with this, by the end of the game, things start to open up, and they open up because you've worn the other team down. The other team gets tired of doing this, and it may be one of those situations where, okay, score's tied 1-1. It's tied. Oh no, might go into overtime, but maybe the last 6-7 minutes, that other team's finally just, they're tired. You start seeing a lot of, shooting lanes, passing lanes, things opening up, opportunities for odd man rushes, the ability to spring a guy, stuff like that, that, on the offensive side opens things up. But on the defensive side, it's really important that you understand that a lot of what they're doing is making it harder for that team to get into the zone and try to score. We talked about a few minutes ago about Colorado kind of having their way with some teams and being able to enter the zone at will and get set up, forcing them to dump the puck every time, making them chase it, getting into puck battles, forcing them to fight for the puck. Not only wears the team down, but it makes it a lot harder for them to get high danger chances and things like that. When you really limit the number of shots that they're willing, or not willing to, but able to take, you're making the workload on your goalkeeper a lot lighter. And when you do that, when the goalie's seeing easy stuff and he's not seeing a lot of it, he's got an easy night, and you're giving him the best opportunity he has to win the game for you. You just have to score a few goals on the other end.
Yeah. It's like the Derrick Henry theory for the Tennessee Titans, the theory where it's like
100%.
you watch him in like the first half, it's like, 1 yard run, 2 yard
Yep.
one, another 1 yard run. And it's kind of like, oh, that's the best running back in the NFL. But then it's like you see it as the game goes on, every time that giant 250-pound man who runs a 4.4 speed, every time he lays a hit on you, it gets a little bit harder to get up back to the line the next play. It's a
Yep.
little bit tougher to wrap him up next time just because you're so like not just physically hurting, but a little bit mentally shot. And that's kind of the thing with the Nashville Predators. I feel like, we talked about some of these slower starts the Preds have had, and it's kind of been a trend. The Predators, maybe the first 5-10 minutes of the game, there's a lot of mistakes. They're kind of a little bit of a sloppy play, and then they kind of dig themselves out of it. It goes on. And it's interesting listening to, hear your kind of explanation for that, because that is something that you can tie into. The Preds are being very physical. They're going all out really on both ends of the ice. And you see that lead to maybe some mistakes, some wide open chances for the other team. But as the game goes on, you start seeing the tables turn a little bit. It's the other team that's starting to make a little bit more mistakes. The Predators jumping on chances. And it seems like John Hines has really kind of installed this, this win the war, not the battle kind of thing.
Yeah. And that's, I think it's funny too, if you go back and watch, I could keep telling you to go back and watch the Calgary game again.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
But I know we've all seen it. You notice, and it's funny because what I saw a lot of guys from Calgary do is run their mouth at Tanner Jeannot, right? I saw a lot of talk. I saw Coleman was just nonstop saying stuff, but I also noticed that Coleman ducked away a few times when he saw Jeannot coming.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they'll still talk the talk, but talk's just talk, right?
Well, they're trying to bait him into something, obviously.
Yeah. But as the late great DMX said, talk is cheap. And then he said some other things, but I don't know what kind of podcast
this is. A family podcast.
It's a family podcast. So yes, he said talk is cheap. But if you watch the way the guys act when they're around Jeannot on the ice, that tells you what's really going on. They can run that mouth all day, but when they start ducking hits and maybe thinking twice about trying to enter the zone when he's on the blue line, that's when you know you're winning the war and not just the battle.
Yeah, and that's been the key. And you know what? We talk about the herd line. We know, the kind of style they play, but you look up and down the roster and the physicality is everywhere. One guy we mentioned was Cody Glass.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a guy that we really, at the beginning of the season, he came in with a lot of, I guess, reputation for being, sort of the playmaker, sort of the guy who, is the guy that makes all the pretty passes. And then he goes down to Milwaukee, and ever since he's been back, you see the change in his game. He is getting to the net. He's not necessarily the guy that just hangs out at the wing and tries to make an easy play in. He is using his body to try to create plays for himself and for his line mates. And it's funny, Shaun, another guy that I think really embodies that, and it's been more of a longer term picture, is Mikael Granlund.
Oh yeah.
That is another guy. You watch him the last couple of years in Minnesota, and then watch him, the evolution of his game since he's been in Nashville. He is a completely different player. He's not that, he is still an A+ playmaker, but he's not, just the speedy winger who's going to set up plays. He is doing it all 200 feet of ice.
I think there are a lot of instances, and
Ryan Johansson, another guy.
Oh, Johansson is a big boy. I think that's what a lot of people forget is that he is a large body out there, and when he wants to use it the way that he can, good. Look out. Good luck. That's a huge dude. But I'll tell you the thing about Granlund, and this really surprised me. There were several instances, and I was covering in person on Tuesday for the Calgary game, where I would look down and I would see somebody in a jersey that ended in number 4. Getting really aggressive, getting really physical with a player in front of the net. And I kept thinking, why is Jeannot out there with Forsberg and Duchene? It doesn't make sense. And I realized it was Granlund. Granlund's out there looking like he's like a brand new man. He's out there. He's willing to throw his body around. He's getting into shoving matches. He is getting very, very physical out there and trying to make stuff happen. He is a net front disruptor. And I think I asked him at the beginning of the year after we noticed a major change in his net front play, hey, what have you done with your net front game to make this change? And he was really coy. He's like, I don't really think I'm doing anything different than I've ever done. And I'm like, well, buddy, we've been watching different games.
Yeah, we have receipts.
Yeah, we can go back and show you not doing that quite a bit. Not to take anything away from him, but saying that whatever this evolution of Mikael Granlund is, it's definitely a lot more aggressive, and it's definitely a welcome thing. And you talk about, making plays happen and making things happen for Forsberg and Duchene out there to have a combined 79 goals on the season. You can attribute a lot of that to Mikael Granlund.
Absolutely. And of course, Roman Yossi having a career year doesn't hurt either. Um,
No.
Want to talk to you about some of the newer guys on the team. I want to get your take on how guys like Cody Glass and Jeremy Lauzon have been playing. First, though, want to mention today's show brought to you by our friends at Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info. You can find all the latest sports development, league reviews, and news, including this year's NBA playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season and the Stanley Cup playoffs in just a couple of weeks. BetOnline is also your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. They have a lot of different props and odds for every single Preds game. It's things like who's going to score the first goal, who's going to have more penalty minutes, will there be a fight, blah, 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 blah. Pretty much any prop bet you can think of, Bet Online has you covered. So go check it out. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. That's betonline.net, where the game starts. Shaun, the Preds have had a couple of minor roster turnover things really since the trade deadline. I want to get your thoughts. We talked about Cody Glass a little bit in terms of the physicality part. What changes have you seen in him since he's been back in the Predators lineup?
So one of the biggest things, and if you go back to the beginning of the season and look at those games, I remember watching him very closely. I've made no secret of the fact that my precious son is the biggest Ryan Ellis fan possible, and we had a really rough time when he was traded. So I've really had my eye on guys that were a part of that deal to kind of see how they've developed. And so watching Glass early on, like you said, he was kind of known as the playmaker, the guy to make really good passes and things like that. And I'm not going to use the word unwillingness, but there was definitely a hesitancy to get involved in the physical aspect of the game. And he also played with a lot of indecisiveness. Really, one of the things that John Hines has said is look, he's been injured. He was coming off an injury when he came to the team. He really hadn't had a ton of chances to play. He hadn't played a lot of hockey. So getting him the chance to go to the American Hockey League and play for head coach Carl Taylor, shout out, my boy, would do him really well. He got 60 games down there and he's come back. He's much more decisive with the puck. He's much more aggressive and he's much more willing to engage in puck battles and to just really, much like Mikael Granlund, be a net front disruptor and try to make things happen for his line mates up there. He also seems faster too. I don't think that speed was necessarily an issue before, but everybody always says one of the biggest differences between the AHL and the NHL is just the speed at which the game is played. So he seems like he is right there with everybody on these plays. I've really enjoyed watching his skating kind of change from the beginning of the season to now.
Yeah, I mean, you notice it. I mean, it's definitely noticeable. And I was kind of on the train of, I don't know why Cody Glass is going down to the minors. I don't know why, he's not being used more, blah, 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 all this and all that. And you don't really get an answer to that question until you see him back up and you see the difference in his game. I mean, we sort of saw it a little bit last year when Eeli Tolvanen came back. He was a completely different player than the player everybody kind of thought the Preds drafted. He played a totally different style of game. And it's a shame he's kind of hit a cold snap this year. He's obviously still got a lot of room to grow. But, when you see kind of plays like that, it kind of reminds us as fans to, okay, let's take a step back. Let's breathe. Let's trust what they're doing. And let's see what happens when they come back in the lineup, because there might be a reason more than just what we're seeing right now.
Well, I think you've seen a lot of players recently take Eeli Tolvanen, for example, Cody Glass. What do we always know about Eeli Tolvanen before he came to the NHL? He had a really nasty wrist shot, right? Yep. What do we know about Cody Glass? He could make really good passing plays. When you go to the AHL and play in Milwaukee under head coach Carl Taylor, my boy, he is focused on, look, next time you're up playing at the NHL level, what are you going to do aside from those things that you're known for to really show that you're a more complete player? And he wants to add on those layers to their game. So someone like Eli Tolvanen with the wicked wrister there, they also wanted to add a physical element to his game. He worked on growing into his body. He's a much bigger guy than he was when he first showed up, and he leans into that aggressive role. And I think you take somebody like Tolvanen, I'm not going to say that the results are going to be the same, but remember last season when Matt Duchene was doing everything right but not getting rewarded for it?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's where Eli Tolvanen is right now. He's doing the right things.
Yeah.
He's generating chances. They're just not hitting the back of the net. And I'm hoping that maybe over the offseason or maybe even before that, things will start turning his way. You take Cody Glass, like you said, he's known for making the pretty passing plays and setting things up. But now they've added those layers to his game. I still think he can grow into his body, number one. Right. But number two, he's much faster. So he's not just there to make passes. He's there to get down and defend and things like that. And he's also playing a much more aggressive physical game. Therefore, he's not just a one-note player that comes in and can do one thing. And it looks really cool when he does it. But the rest of the time, they're just kind of useless out there.
Is there a player on the Preds now, or maybe let's just open it up to anybody in the NHL that you look at Cody Glass and you say, this is somebody that he can kind of emulate. Maybe best case scenario, this is somebody he can kind of grow into.
Well, I'd say on the Preds, what I'd really like to see is I'd like to see him spend some time with Mikael Granlund, and I'd like to see him just learn what I would call the Granlund wizardry with setting up his line mates and that net front disruption. I think he's showing a knack for it, and I think if you kind of got him with someone who's really figured it out to kind of teach him and demonstrate a little bit better, I think it would be really beneficial for him. And I think you would see him become even better than he has already gotten after spending time in the AHL. I don't know about league-wide. What do you think?
I don't know about league-wide either. I was going to say, doesn't he kind of remind you of Ryan Johansson a little bit?
He does. He is big.
I mean, he's got the same build.
Yeah.
And he had the same reputation, albeit with a very, very small sample size as Johansson did when he kind of came in. And, they're both lanky. They're both guys that kind of had to learn to grow into their bodies a little bit. And I look at Glass's game, just like the really good setup, like the really good eye for making a good hockey play. And that's something that Ryan Johansson has too. And so that to me is more of an interesting, okay, maybe this can kind of be your Ryan Johansson carbon copy.
Hey, you can have a lot of really good mentors on the team.
It doesn't hurt.
You can definitely
if you're having
pull
to choose
from everybody.
Between Ryan Johansson and Mikael Granlund, there's worse picks to choose from.
Oh, I agree. But yeah, that makes sense. That's a good call on Johansson. I was more thinking about I wasn't thinking about the body shape and size as much as I was thinking about the style of play.
Johansson's orangutan arms.
His long orangutan arms.
Yeah. Obviously he's hurt now, which is kind of a bummer. But what are your thoughts on Jeremy Lauzon? Because that's another guy who came in at the trade deadline with not a lot of positive reinforcement behind him. I think he's played really well. And obviously it's a shame he's hurt and is probably going to be out at least for the rest of the regular season, it sounds like. But yeah, what are your thoughts on how he's played so far and maybe his longer term fit here?
Yeah, that initial reaction was kind of rough. And I think, I don't think it was undeserved in the sense that, the numbers looked bad. But again, if we judge everything by numbers and we're only looking at things from one angle, it really took, and I'll go ahead and give credit once again to Twitter user Angry Preds Fan for pointing out a few things and saying, I went back and kind of looked at how he was deployed on the team, especially when he played in Boston. And he was playing, I want to say he's playing on the top pairing. And it was not really where he needed to be. It wasn't a style of play on the top pairing that was going to fit his style. And it wasn't really going to develop. And then, of course, he gets sent to Seattle, which, as much as people thought Seattle might turn into be Vegas Part 2, Seattle has turned into be Seattle.
Seattle Part 1.
Seattle Part 1, which is kind of like maybe Preds inaugural season. It's not great. But I think the GMs learned their lesson, but that's another story for another day.
Yeah. Well,
But
Ann and I had a very long thing yesterday
Oh.
about where the Kraken went wrong this year.
Yeah, I think you've got him on a team now where he's going to be used in the role that he is kind of built for, while at the same time playing on a team with some Norris caliber defenders that he could learn a lot from. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got to remember, Roman Josi is not just the best defenseman on the Predators. He's one of the best defenders in the entire NHL.
Yeah.
And, that in and of itself, he's the captain of the team. He kind of sets the standard for, this is how we work on and off the ice. This is the kind of mindset we bring into the arena every time we come in, or the practice facility, regardless. Time with someone like Roman Josi, that's one of those intangibles, you can't really account for that on paper. It's like, well, what's behind this change? Dude's playing right beside Roman Josi in practice all the time. You've got his ear. Learn from him. Learn at his feet. See what he's doing. Have him teach you. And I think you've even seen him playing as a partner with Josi several times in the middle of a game, and he looks fine. And what I'd say about that is he's being used right on a team that's known for developing defenders. It seems like a perfect scenario. I think the plan is, if you look at what they did with Mark Borowiecki and Matt Benning, bringing them in initially on 2-year contracts, Borowiecki is already renewed for next season. Benning is not. And I feel like the idea is that they're probably going to be looking at Lauzon as their, at least in the next few years, solution for Borowiecki's partner on the third pairing. I don't know if they're planning to move on from Benning or not, but he doesn't have a new contract yet. And so I think Lauzon's probably going to be here for a while. And I think the idea is that what a lot of people consider to be an overpay and a second round draft pick, now that he would be, say, signing an extension, means that it wasn't just a rental, and that they see him as a project that's going to get better.
If you're talking about physicality, you can't do much worse than a Mark Borowiecki, Jeremy Lauzon bottom pair.
That's a rough and tough line. It takes a pretty tough dude to take a cross check to the mouth. It takes an even tougher dude to go out the next day with a lip full of stitches and voluntarily get into a fist fight with another man.
They're built different, hockey players. A lot different than you. I would be done for the year if like a stick got anywhere near my neck.
I think on the podcast I did with Alex Doherty right after that, I grabbed one of these sticks behind me, just kind of tapped myself in the mouth with it, and it's not something I would advise you to do.
It's not a Fisher Price toy.
No, these are like carbon fiber. You grab the old tutu stick here. It's done some damage.
Are we gonna get a demonstration?
Well, I mean, I hit him like there.
Yeah,
I mean, that's hard.
Yeah,
these they flex a little bit, but I mean, they don't give. If you've got two hands up close, I mean, you're just getting punched in the face with one of these. And I think he probably got lucky that he didn't lose any more teeth, because these things aren't very forgiving. I mean, he came away with quite a few stitches in his lip, so he got hurt. But then to turn around and again voluntarily drop the gloves with someone whose goal is to punch you in the mouth that's already full of stitches.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah. Built different.
Yeah.
Mark Borowiecki is. Well, Shaun, it's been fun, man. It's been good to get the old band back together.
I've had a good time. Happening. Yeah. This is fun. I miss our conversations.
I do. Yeah. So the next time Anna's on vacation, I'll know who to call. In the meantime, where can the people find your work?
Oh, goodness, Nick. Let me tell you, there's a few places. Of course, you can find my written work at OnTheForecheck.com. You can also catch me on the show Renegades of Puck. I'm also on the show On the Preds with Alex Doherty. That's about where you can find me on a regular basis. But I've been on the radio a few times recently too, which has been really, really an awesome experience. The fact that people are interested to hear, or at least that they think other people are interested to hear what I have to say about hockey is always shocking and impressive to me. So any opportunity I get, I'll definitely let everybody know there on the old twitter.com that they can tune in and find me somewhere. But of course, on Twitter, as you can see, I'm going to say it's right there. It's at SESOTF.
Yeah. I think I'm mirrored. So
yeah, you're good. Look at that.
Yeah. I'm Nick Morgan. Also, I'll be back with Ann tomorrow. You can find me at OnTheForecheck.com as well. You can also follow the podcast itself at LO_Predators. And if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let us know what you thought of our takes on the Preds' last couple games and their physicality. And let us know if there's ever a topic you want us to discuss in a future show down the road. That's going to do it for us on the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back tomorrow with a preview of the Preds' back-to-back weekend slate.